Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to you this last day of March 2024. My apologies for leaving you in the lurch last Thursday. It had not been my intent, but my body felt otherwise, so forgive me for that. Maybe later in the program I'll share with you my wonderful adventure that day. Suffice to say, I am going to, I'm thinking of, I'm not going to, but I am thinking of writing a short essay or op-ed, or who the hell knows what form any opinion piece should take these days, about the emergency rooms in Pittsburgh, because unfortunately I have become a frequent visitor, it seems, and have had a lot of experiences in those places, including one last Thursday that lasted for 9 hours. What a horror. Anyway, the good news is here I am, and there you are, and not a lot has changed since last we spoke anyway, except that things have, as one would have anticipated, gotten worse. Rather than looking back, I find myself today mostly with trepidation and anxiety looking forward to tomorrow, to the election in Wisconsin, which normally, of course, would not interest any of you, might interest me a little bit, that being my home state, and the fact that the Supreme Court there is something that I was personally involved with for some time, as my then husband was the clerk to the Chief Justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And I got to know, I didn't know the Chief Justice very well in any way. He up and died. But another justice I came to know very, very well, and a few others. But he was just a wondrous man. And when I came to Pittsburgh, he made a point of having lunch with me before I left, and and wishing me good luck as I came east. Nathan Heffernan, I'm sure he's long gone by now. What a good guy. Thoroughly enjoyable. Anyway, so the Wisconsin Supreme Court, it's not like when I talk about it, it's some vague thing. I've been in that court. I know the physical surroundings, and I know some of the history of it, and I know its relatively recent history, which is horrific. This election that will determine which way that court leans in these politically divided times is huge, mostly because of gerrymandering. The court, as it in its earlier form a year or so ago, allowed an excessively gerrymandered configuration of districts in Wisconsin that have given that gives Republicans easily 2 House seats that they shouldn't have. I mean, that's how gerrymandering works. Wisconsin is about as 50-50 a state as it comes when it comes to voting. And yet, if you look at our congressional delegation, it's just overwhelmingly Republican because of gerrymandering. So this, who wins this seat tomorrow will determine whether that unfair Republican-leaning favorable gerrymander in Wisconsin will hold, or whether a new court will be able to draw more reasonable lines. Anyway, it's big because, of course, Trump needs that House of Representatives. And we're seeing that they're scared now. They've got such a narrow majority in it, and even seats that were deemed, safe as can be, they're not sure are anymore, which is why his nomination of Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from New York to be his UN ambassador has been withdrawn, because he's afraid if she takes the UN seat and there's a special election, the Democrats would take it, which is amazing because hers is a Republican district. The fact that they think they can't hold that district, or that they may not hold the district in Florida, which was Walz's district, overwhelmingly Republican, shows that they know that what they have done since retaking the government is extremely unpopular, and that the voters, given a chance, will let them know that. So because of that, and because Musk has shown up in my hometown of Green Bay last night and handed out, the obscenity of it is it's beyond alarming. The fact that the world's richest man can go into a state that is about to have this important but very local election and hand out $1 million checks to random voters is such an indictment of what has become of our political system. It is an indictment of our Supreme Court, and not even this current court, an earlier court with their Citizens United outrageous democracy killing Citizens United decision, which allows billionaires to have essentially more votes than any of us, since in this day and age, money buys eyeballs, buys attention, buys disinformation, buys propaganda, buys all the stuff that confuses voters and tips elections. Anyway, I'm hoping that Wisconsin, which is a state that I have almost always been proud to have been born and raised in, the state that was at one time known for its progressivism. In fact, as the birthplace of the progressive movement with Robert La Follette. A state that even had literally socialist mayors in the 1900s in Milwaukee, its largest city. A state that was the first to understand that government had a responsibility to provide a safety net. It has been out in the forefront of so much positive movement in our nation's history. And I am hoping that Musk, by showing up in Green Bay last night and being the repulsive character that he is, will make the election on Tuesday more clearly not about the Supreme Court in Wisconsin anymore, but a referendum on the voters' disgust at what Musk and Trump are doing. And if it is that, then the outcome should be a good one on Tuesday, I would think. But I don't know. I don't know. Huge. Just huge. We'll find out whether the people can eclipse this one man's money and power. Our democracy, in many ways, is hanging in the balance in so many of these fights. This is just one battle. And then, not just to understand the extraordinary corruption we're witnessing, not just the corruption of our electoral system with Musk being able to give out $1 million checks to voters, but also the fact that this one man, unelected, himself a immigrant of a dubious legality, but money buys you anything. This man who has single-handedly engaged in the destruction of 70, 80 years of construction of the United States government, supposedly to save money, supposedly because the little people are somehow stealing it, that there is rampant fraud about. And yet, if you look at where your tax dollars are going, I don't know if you filed your income tax yet, but that check you may have had to write, or all the withholding you've already had put in, I suspect you don't want it ending up in the already overflowing pockets of the world's richest man, Elon Musk. And yet, as they take tax dollars away from children, away from veterans, away from Social Security and the education of our children, all of that, they are not taking away anything from Elon Musk. In fact, he is garnering more and more billions in contracts that this U.S. government is bestowing upon him. On SpaceX, on Starlink, you name the company, and they can't give him money fast enough. So even as he takes, a chainsaw to the government that served the people, he is positioning himself to see billions and billions of dollars in additional federal contracts, which is to say, your money being transferred to him. It's hard not to, want to scream. I came upon there's a few quotes that I want to share with you. One I saw on Blue Sky, and on Mondays it's difficult not to sort of like look back and sum up all the horrors that have happened, in the during the long weekend. But this from the account of it's an account called Mrs. Betty Bowers, sums it up pretty well. I learned this week that you can put our troops' lives in danger, compromise our national security, and violate the Espionage Act, and the government will do nothing. But if you write an editorial for your school newspaper that Trump doesn't like, you can be abducted on the street and disappeared. That's Trump's America. In a nutshell, there it is. And I really cannot believe that a large majority of Americans would be comfortable with that. And then there was another one I saw. And it's about the fact that as we sit here witnessing this horrific coup d'etat, I was going to call it a slow moving coup d'etat. It is not. It's warp speed with which they are destroying everything that former administrations, Republican and Democrat, have built in my lifetime. Just destroying. Sledgehammer destruction, as has been noted by many. But doing it to what end? Because, when you ask the question, why would anybody do such a thing? Well, they want to break it so that they can remake it to allow them to control every institution that survives in whatever crippled form, so that they will have all the power and all the control. That is why. It is a takeover. It is a coup d'etat. And it is fascistic to its core. You can almost check off how Trump, is doing exactly what Adolf Hitler did. after being elected by the voters of Germany. And he's doing it with a speed that hasn't been seen since Hitler. So I saw this. How can someone be on the wrong side of history when history is repeating itself? And that when I saw that, I thought, I mean, this is what I have been thinking and being so stunned by. I mean, it was always a question that troubled me all my life, even as a young person. How could the German people allow what happened? And in part, you can see they must have been surprised by all the norm breaking that started happening immediately, by the speed, all of that, everything. Had not been seen before. The dissolution of institutions and systems, the clearly illegal behavior, the clear brutality unleashed. And yeah, because we're feeling it now too, you can feel how there may have been a paralysis, a disbelief. And how could they possibly know where what was happening in that moment, just months into Hitler's election? How could they possibly have envisioned the horror that awaited them? And in fact, the entire world. But see, Americans don't have that excuse. Because we are ending up on the wrong side of history, knowing where this leads. Having history as a guide, and not ancient history, history lived by our parents and grandparents, by people still alive. People who fought the horror then. How can someone be on the wrong side of history when we know where this leads? And the quote I saw says, it's like failing an open book test. And that suggests either an overwhelming stupidity or an appalling, what, disinterest? I'm not sure. So, again, just sharing with you stuff. Something else I saw that just freaked me out, and it's a quote from our now Vice President, J.D. Vance. And it was before he was vice president. It's from 4 years ago. And it was an interview that he did. So there's a transcript of it. And he was explaining why he and others who he called conservatives, I call them racists, nationalists, fascists, whatever. They are anything but conservative. Conservative, by its very definition, right, is about conserving things. These are the guys who come in and destroyed. That's the opposite of conservation. They have wiped out everything. So here's what he said, and I think, again, it shows how, first of all, we didn't listen or didn't believe that what they were saying was what they genuinely intended and fervently believed. This is what I think is a big problem with our side, that we lack the ferocity of their side, the passion. And we better find it real soon. So listen to what the guy, who astonishingly now is a heartbeat away from becoming the president of the United States. This is in a 2021 interview. Conservatives, Vance said, have lost every major political powerful institution in the country. So this explains what they feel, that they had lost everything. They had no power, no control. He says, we've lost every powerful institution except for maybe the churches and religious institutions, which of course are weaker now than they've ever been, he said. We've lost big business. Huh? I mean, what? He thought big business wasn't on the conservative side? Okay. We've lost finance. He thought Wall Street wasn't on the conservative side. We've lost the culture. Well, I can see where he thinks that. We've lost the academy, meaning the university. And if we're going to actually really affect real change, it will require us completely replacing the existing ruling class with another ruling class. And here, listen to this. I don't think, said Vance, there's sort of a compromise that we're going to come up with the people who currently actually control the country. Unless we overthrow them, we're going to keep losing. We really need to be really ruthless when it comes to the exercise of power. Believe him now? He was telling us, as Project 2025 was telling us, everything they intended to do. It's funny, for guys who lie every time they open their mouths, this is the one strange instance in which they were telling us the truth. So believe them when they say things like what Trump said astonishingly over the weekend. And you know what I'm talking about there, I would assume. In the interview with Kristen Welker, Donald Trump flat out saying, and believe him, believe this lying son of a bitch. He starts, of course, with a lie. Here's his words to Welker. Well, let me put it this way. You have to start by saying, I have the highest poll numbers of any Republican for the last 100 years. Now, see, I mean, yeah, that's the fire hose lie, right? He goes on, we're in the high 70s. And you see that. No, you don't. In your dreams, Donald. But no, it's a lie. And then this man, who astonishingly is the President of the United States of America, says, and you know we're very popular. Yeah, it's why he pulled Stefanik's nomination and why Musk is giving out $1 million checks in Green Bay. And you know, a lot of people would like me to do that, that being run for a third term. But I mean, I basically tell them we have a long way to go. It's it's very early in the administration. And Welker says so, but I don't hear you ruling it out or serving a third term. And Trump says, a lot of people want me to do it. But we have, my thinking is, we have a long way to go. I'm focused on the current. And then she says, have you been presented with any potential plans that would allow you, seeing as there's a constitutional amendment saying you can't, that would allow you to serve a third term? And Trump, and here's where you believe him. Well, there are plans. There are, well, not plans. There are methods which you could do it, as you know. And she said, well, let me throw out one where President Vance would, be in office and then would basically, would then pass the baton to you. And Trump very quickly says, yeah, well, that's one. But there are others too. There are others. I can't imagine that's the one they'd like because, first of all, Vance is such a repulsive character that unless they do truly rig with Elon and the tech bros help the election, I can't see Vance winning anything. And then I'm sure Trump, not trusting him, would not trust that he would then hand power back to him. And Welker says, you mean there are others? Can you tell me another? And Trump says, no. And then she asks him again, I mean, you don't sound like you're joking. I mean, I've heard you, I mean, you have joked about this a number of times in the past. And he says, I am not joking. And repeats, I am not joking. Believe him. So we're watching the coup d'etat play out, making January 6th look like a, I don't know, just a sort of an out of control frat party. And they're speaking openly about, yet again, defying the Constitution and having him serve another term. You know, the only thing that I think people think can save us are the courts and or the voters, if given a fair chance. Seeing as the voters put this vile piece of crap in, I just can't imagine relying on them, but we'll start seeing maybe tomorrow. If you believe in the power of prayer, I would utilize it liberally. So I happened to read something about Brazil that interested me in terms of relating it to what's happening here. You may recall that Brazil had a Trump-like president, Bolsonaro, and you also may recall that he tried to play the Trump playbook when he lost his election, his reelection campaign. And this was pretty much right after, Trump insisted that he had won in 2020. Bolsonaro, just ripped the page right out of Trump's playbook and said that the Brazilian election had been rigged and there was a scheme preventing him and the good people of Brazil from having the president that they had wanted. And so things began to unfold there very much like they unfolded here. A mob attacked their legislature. But that's where things start to differ. Because Bolsonaro is not the president again. Bolsonaro, in fact, is going to go on trial on charges that he oversaw an illegal and unconstitutional scheme to cling to power, including an attempt to overturn the vote of the people. So he and 7 members of his inner circle are all now indicted and charged with really serious crimes, and they're going to trial. Would that our system, our legal system, worked like Brazil's? What is it with ours? What is it with theirs? Who would think, that we'd be looking longingly at Brazil's legal system as it deals with essentially the same abuse, an attempt of abuse of power, a takeover by their president? Somehow the Brazilian government has managed to do a full investigation, released an almost 1,000-page report accusing him of directing and approving a detailed plot, plans to annul the election results, to disband courts, to grant special powers to the military, and even to poison the president-elect. part of the scheme was also, and again, taken from the Trump playbook, was to sow unfounded doubt about the reliability of Brazil's electronic voting machines. So I read this piece wistfully. Can you imagine a headline that said, and I'll just change one word in this headline I'm looking at, Trump to face trial for his role in coup. Can you imagine? Okay, quickly looking at some of the damage done, just very quickly. Speaking of damage, the horror of the earthquake in Myanmar. I was sickened when I heard that China, Russia, India, Thailand, I mean, you name it, countries all over the world immediately dispatched search and rescue teams, dogs, supplies, everything they could muster to the people of Myanmar. Yeah, guess who hasn't showed up yet? And that's it. Well, if you totally destroy the agency that would have in the past led the international aid effort, I don't know what you could expect, right? So, yeah. Oh, we say we're coming. We're coming. Um, but we're not quite there. Says here a 3-person U.S. aid assessment team is not expected to arrive in Myanmar until Wednesday. Meanwhile, China has pledged $14 million in relief. They've sent 122 rescue workers who are on the ground there and have been since the day after, and dogs, medical kits, drones, earthquake detectors, you name it. And this is where we used to be a leader. People look to us for help. Ain't going to be looking at us anymore. They'll look to China. And when you start looking for help from a country, you fall under that country's sway. That's the soft power thing about foreign aid and just being a good neighbor that these brutal, fascistic Trumpians don't get. We're just handing all these other countries over to, well, whoever wants them, because apparently we don't. I was looking at how, I mean, there's so many stories that you just can't believe, but one is that Trump, he's totally stopped. No one in their right mind would attempt to come here now. Even the airlines are like changing their schedules because like people in Europe aren't flying here if they can help it. people from any place aren't flying. The Europeans and the Canadians mostly just to say fuck you. But, if you're Asian or if you're black and you're not an American citizen, would you want to fly into the United States right now? I don't think so. So just never mind what that does to our tourist industry. Hey, how's the stock market doing? I haven't looked. I mean, you look at the free fall of our economy under these clowns. But there, people all over the world are just, refusing to buy our products. They won't come here for good reason. Anyway, Trump doesn't want anybody coming in. I mean, all the refugee programs are on hold, this, that, and the other, while we round up any poor soul who looks not right or has the wrong tattoo or is a little too much melanin. Whatever. The one refugee program that Trump's put all his energy into is one that didn't even exist. And when I first heard it, I thought, this can't be real. But it is. It's a special program to let all those poor, beleaguered white South Africans like Elon Musk into our country. No questions practically asked. Not only that, there's actually, this is a huge program. While we haven't managed to deploy any teams to Myanmar for those poor souls, we have deployed multiple teams to South Africa to convert commercial office space in Pretoria into refugee centers for white people. Yeah, who make up what? 7% of the population, but hold what? 50% or more of the land, wealth, whatever. Yeah, right. And Trump may have taken security away from, well, you name it, people who are under genuine threat of assassination, like General Milley. He's pulled security from those people, but he's providing security escorts to American officials conducting interviews of potential poor white South African refugees. Understand, these people are not under threat. Like so many people in refugee camps around the world who are under true threat of death, of starvation. These people who he's concerned about have only one qualification. Yeah, they be white. The racism at the bottom of what we are currently enduring is overlooked too often, but it's all about racism. And if you follow Heather Cox Richardson, she is a historian, and she lays out that Republicans who've been jawing about welfare and taxes and welfare queens, all this, all the dog whistles of black people somehow taking your money, how that began after the Civil War. And it is a narrative from Those southern states, God bless them, that allowing these former slaves somehow to have equal standing with white people, their masters, was so unconscionable that they formed, they started a narrative of, the way this is going to work is you're going to get taxed and that money's going to go to them. How can they be taxed? They don't have any money. Why don't they have any money? Well, never mind about that. They don't have any money. We're going to be taxed. They're going to get all the money. And this idea, rooted in racism and the mourning for the loss of slavery, is what we're dealing with now, because that narrative has stayed alive. It's been coddled and cared for by racists when they were Democrats, and by racists now that they're mostly Republicans. It's what Reagan was selling. It's always been a big part, whether it was obvious or it was a little wink or it was subtle, but there was a time at which it was not subtle, where they said it out loud. And you know what's interesting? We're back at that time. They're saying it out loud. And because this is rooted in just base, ignorant, hateful prejudice, there's a tenacity to it. It's generation after generation after generation after generation just passed down this hate, this looking down upon, this cartoonish picture of what a real American is and what a deserving American is. And now you see it with just absolute out in our faces effort to wipe Black people out of our history. The Smithsonian takeover beyond belief. They say there's things in there that are un-American. You know what those things are? It's like reality, history, like slavery, like Jim Crow, like lynchings, like, like that. That's considered un-American. It's American to the core. It is our history. I've known that history, and I still have loved this country because it has haltingly but relatively constantly moved itself forward. Little baby steps and then backlash and back you go, and baby steps, and we've been moving forward. But this grain of stupidity, ignorance, hate, this feeling better about oneself because you can look down on another, and that other's got to be kept down. The people with the money have been playing poor white Americans forever. ever. And man, they played them big time in November again. Told them they'd take care of them. They'd make sure all these black and brown freeloaders and God knows what, murderers, rapists, who knows, you name it. Yeah, disease spreaders, we're going to get rid of them. Don't worry. We're going to take care of you, the real Americans. They fell for it again. Incredible. When you don't honestly, collectively deal with your history, who you have been, you cannot move forward. It's like as an individual, if you're holding on to a bunch of conflicted crapola in your heart, it'll destroy you ultimately. Guys, we gotta fight. Speaking of that, well, that's interesting. Last time I was speaking to you, Fetterman and McCormick, we're going to have this, soiree on Saturday afternoon at an undisclosed location. And I was, railing about it. And look at what happened. It got canceled. And what's fascinating is it got canceled because they're scared of us. And news accounts of this cancellation are interesting in that I don't know if I've been on or off or whatever, but guys, I'm just saying that Fetterman and McCormick are peas in a pod. They are disrespecting the people they're supposed to be representing. They are hiding from us when they won't even return calls to reporters, let alone constituents. Fuck them. Unbelievable. Okay, that's it. Anyway, I don't know. I've been saying that the Zoom stuff was down and blah blah blah. It doesn't matter. I'm going. Thanks for being here, and I'll be back tomorrow with my sister Susan. I hope the tech works.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.